One of the most popular questions I get asked in my comments is, Banana, can you show us a cheap setup to use in the Crimson Isle? Because the thing is, when I record my videos, I use my 18 billion coin net worth to my advantage. I have a really nice setup, but a lot of people can't afford that. So in this video, I'm going to show you a setup that can definitely get you through a bunch of stuff in the Crimson Isle all by yourself, and it's going to be absolutely dirt cheap. I'm actually shocked how good this setup is for how cheap it is, and it only gets better once you spend more money in the future. It's not going to be an end game setup that's going to make you destroy everything, but it's going to be something that gives you a shot to fight the mini bosses, fight everything around the map, and succeed without having to get hard carried by someone with Hyperion. So if you enjoyed this video, or if it helps you out, I'd really appreciate a like or a subscription. I'm on the grind for 60k, and subscribing would mean the world to me. So let's get into this cheap setup. All right, I need to preface this by saying one thing, and that is that I don't know for sure if the stuff that I'm using has a requirement on it. If it has a requirement, the requirement would be to beat tier 1 Kudra. So you'd have to go through the entire quest line on the island, and then you'd have to do the boss. And this is doable in just something like Necromancer, Lord Armor, or just anything that is reasonably tanky. You can have one guy deal a lot of the damage there. So if you could find someone who is willing to play with a tank, you're definitely going to be able to do tier 1 Kudra. It's not hard, but I don't know if it has a requirement. It may not. And if it doesn't, then this is going to be super easy to get for normal players because there is a lot of it on AH and it's dirt cheap. First up, I want to look at the weapon, and that weapon is going to be the Aurora Staff. This drops from Kudra, and it's not good for endgame. When you're using something like Storm Armor or have a Hyperion, the Aurora Staff is garbage, but it's like 1,000,000 coins on the auction house, and I have a very bad Aurora Staff here. You can see tier 5 enchants across the board. Nothing on this is that good. But the weapon is still going to be a mage weapon that costs 10 mana, and you can basically ignore the left clicking to swap runes right now because that whole part of the passive pretty much doesn't work as far as I can tell. But this thing is going to have 3 different runes that you can swap through if you felt like it, and you're going to be able to see those runes if you're using Aurora armor. It's a whole thing, but just know, right click to deal damage for 10 mana. It's pretty decent for mid game and early game, but it's not an end game weapon whatsoever. Since we're using the Aurora Staff, we should also be using Aurora Armor because this is also super cheap. This is like 1,000,000 coins per piece on the auction house, and then you need to put Necrotic on it, which is absolutely nothing. You're going to see I have no gemstones in this. I have just Necrotic, and only one of them is recombobulated. I do have good Wither Goggles on. I didn't want to buy new Wither Goggles, but Wither Goggles are essential to play Mage in general, so these I would recommend going to get anyways. Definitely star these as much as you can, and they're just going to be awesome because they're going to give you ability damage. So your armor is going to be Aurora Armor with the Wither Goggles. It's also important that we look at equipment, and this is actually going to be the most expensive part, but it is going to be a huge damage buff if you get this set. The Vanquished armor has a secret set. I don't know if everyone knows this, but it has a full set bonus where, while on the Crimson Isle, you're going to take less damage, and your damage gets multiplied by 1.1x. So it's going to be a multiplicative damage increase if you get the Vanquished Magma Necklace, Gas Cloak, Blaze Belt, and Glowstone Gauntlet. The Glowstone Gauntlet is like dirt cheap. The Gas Cloak is really good, and you should get this anyways. And then the other two are going to be anywhere from 4 to 5 million a pop, but this set bonus is going to be really good, and it's not a super expensive equipment setup compared to something like a Gauntlet of Contagion, which costs more than like all of these combined. So the Vanquish set is super good. All right, let's look at Thaumaturgy for a second because I want to remind people that you should get the Sighted Reforged Stone. If you're going to be using this setup, it's going to be the best one. It's called an Ender Monocle. It's from Watchers in the End if you want to grind it yourself, but it's dirt cheap. On the Bazaar, you can see you're able to get all 9 for about 900k, so it's not going to really break the bank, but this is going to give you intelligence and ability damage. I've lowered my magical power to 799 for the sake of this video. I'm trying to show off a weaker setup here, so 799 is still kind of high, but I usually have like 1,030 something. So this is definitely a lower magical power than I typically would have, and it's going to be more accurate to what you guys will be able to do. The last thing that's pretty important for this setup is going to be the sheep pet. Sheep is really good for mage. It's not really about the mana saving at all right now. It's just going to be ability damage because you aren't going to be able to afford a G-Drag. So sheep is going to be your best bet, and this is just going to increase your damage, and it will lower your mana cost, which is good for something like a voodoo doll. But seriously, when you're using the Aurora Staff, you don't really care about mana. Definitely do try and pair this setup with any other mage weapon that you have that can supplement more damage, because the Aurora Staff can be a main weapon, but there are so many secondary mage weapons that can be so good with this setup. One that I really love, and I even use on my endgame mage setup, is the voodoo doll. The voodoo doll is fantastic for the amount of money that it costs. It can deal so much damage per tick, and it costs so little mana to throw on, and it's going to be 10 seconds of constant damage whenever you use the voodoo doll. Another item that I have talked about so much that I think every single person should go for is the Fire Veil Wand. This is from Ash Fang and the Mage Outlaw. It drops from Ash Fang, but if you're crafting, you need to do the Mage Outlaw as well. So that's going to be a really good weapon. And then things like the Ink Wand can be thrown in to just add a little bit more burst damage to this setup. There is so many different options for weapons to throw in with the Aurora Staff, but, you know, just pick a couple, pick whatever you can afford, because all of them probably should be helpful. With all of that in mind, you can actually start to deal damage and do things on the Crimson Isle. I think that the best thing about this setup compared to something like a melee setup is that you can do it from far away. So you're going to see that I'm able to two-shot Wither Specters. I am able to fight magma cubes outside, and I'm also able to participate in mini bosses, because mini bosses aren't going to hit you if you're backing away from them. Maybe Ash Fang is still going to be kind of hard with this setup, but something like Blade Soul is definitely at least survivable. It takes a while to kill by yourself because it's not an endgame setup. It's not the greatest thing ever, but you're going to see that I am able to deal a little bit of damage to it, and that's all you're really looking for at the stage in the game that this set is coming from. So let me know down below what you guys think about this setup. Are you going to end up using it? Do you think it is bad? Do you want to see a melee setup? I'm a mage at heart, so I figured I may as well talk about the cheapest mage setup I know of. And you can see I got top damage on that mini boss with this absolutely poopy held back setup, because seriously, I could make this so much better for cheap money if I just threw on some fine gemstones onto literally everything, or if I had a little bit more talismans. The sky's the limit with this, and I am on the ground right now. So this setup is definitely decent for the price that it is coming at. It's probably about 30 million coins, but I hope this helped you out. Hope that you guys end up using this set. Let me know if you do, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace out.